Hey there, listeners. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2020, 4 days after Valentine's Day. So we wish you a very happy, belated Valentine's Day. We've got some hot takes for you today. We're going to do a rapid-fire news segment at the beginning here of the podcast of record. Then we're going to do a couple of longer deep dives into some tech and cultural issues. We got a lot of people in the studio today, though. We got, of course, me and Joe as always, but Rebecca is joining as a guest host again today. We got producer Kyle, production assistant Max, and now we also have production assistant Maria in the studio with us. You can't hear her because she doesn't have a microphone, but she's sitting over there on the other side of the room looking at us and enjoying her first experience with the podcast live and in person.
She's going to learn a lot.
So welcome, Maria. Before we get right into the news segment, I do want to remind you we've got this beautiful listener survey that is up on the Podcast of Record website. Go to podcastofrecord.com/survey. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. You can downvote Joe if you want to, or maybe upvote producer Kyle. There's lots of things you can do there. Rebecca's hitting her button, but it's her cough button. It's not her voting button.
I need it to be a downvote.
But anyways, so let's start off with the news here. The first one's going to make your eyes open a little bit because we're going to talk about Pornhub. So Pornhub is in the news this past couple weeks for their Valentine's Day stunt. And their Valentine's Day stunt was to set up a pop-up store. Was it in New York? I'm assuming it was in New York.
All pop-up stores are in New York.
All pop-up stores
They're
are
all
in New York.
Like, we did a pop-up store.
Some of them are
Where'd
in
you do it?
Some of them are in LA.
We're in New York. Real original.
It was open until 9 p.m. on Valentine's Day. But the interesting thing is you might assume that because it's a Pornhub store that it was sex toys or equally uncomfortable or weird things that a
you're not
pop-up
very
store.
sex positive.
I'm not very sex store positive. They're mostly creepy from what I can see from the road.
Yeah, from the road, sure.
I'm just saying. I would never wear a dark hoodie and just go in with my hood up so no one recognizes me. But so they had nice things for Valentine's Day. They had boxes of chocolates. Some of them had a little bit of risque sayings on them, like "I can't take my thighs off of you."
Ew.
Yeah, that's gross, right? But the founder, I guess, the co-founder of this concept said the idea was not to make a sex shop. The idea was to not have everything be about sex. It can be about love, which helps to build the brand.
I mean, that's definitely Pornhub's mission.
Is to build love.
Love, yeah, absolutely,
exactly.
for sure.
Bow, chicka, wow, wow.
They want people to see the safe for work aspect of the brand too. So
I think they still missed that. Yeah, I think they did.
I mean, this is a workplace. I wouldn't give anyone here or have a card sitting out that says I can't take my thighs off of you.
Yeah.
So it's not safe for the
I mean,
workplace.
I would probably, if I walked past, say, producer Kyle's computer and Pornhub was on the screen, like, Kyle, dude.
Regardless of
NSFW.
what page it was on, right? Even
Yeah.
if it was on the Pornhub page
Yeah.
of the Valentine's Day
store.
pop-up store.
Funny last thing on that article, for my download weekly newsletter, I pulled the Google Trends on searches for news and for porn in one of the articles I was doing. And searches for porn have basically been the highest search on the internet forever.
For a long time, yeah.
Except there was an inflection point in 2016 where searches for news outranked searches for porn by a slight margin because of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So Donald Trump has actually made America
But
more
then they found out
interested in
about Stormy
politics.
Daniels and made it right back to porn.
Good
so,
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was self-enforcing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to say that there was like a weird trend of people looking for porn with people wearing pantsuits or something. And I was going to be like, oh, God.
I mean, it's like rule 37 of the internet. What's the rule? If it exists, there's porn of it.
Yeah,
That's probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rule 37. I don't know what
All
it
right,
is.
so we're going to move on to
next
story number 2. We're done talking about porn for the rest of the episode. So for those of you that
Bye.
just tuned in for that, you can just hit the pause button at this point, I guess, because we got through your story.
Go surf where you're going to go to surf.
So let's talk about IGTV for a second. If
Incognito.
you're an Instagram user, you probably have seen that annoying little IGTV button. That button is going away because what
Deprecated.
Instagram decided is it basically offered no value. Most people that were watching full-length IGTV videos were doing it from other tabs in the app, and it just annoyed people.
When they
So
started-
bye-bye IGTV button.
When they started making it where if the video ran past a minute, 2 minutes, what is it, a minute? And you just push to
It's
go
past
watch on
1 minute, yeah.
IGTV,
Mhm.
like that did it. Like that made it work. But they're getting rid of that whole IGTV section, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I felt personally victimized by the IGTV button
Why's that?
Why did you feel personally
when I would
victimized?
accidentally click it and then it would start and it takes like a delay
Oh,
for
to
you to be able
load,
to
yeah.
exit out, and I'd be like, no, and then you just have to sit there and I'd be like, this is really annoying.
Yeah. IGTV.
Yeah.
What's next?
So next up on the hot take list is HQ Trivia. Did anyone here play HQ Trivia in its heyday?
Matt did.
Yeah, I played it a little bit.
I did a little.
It was fun. I don't think this one was a hard one to predict. HQ Trivia is going away. It has not survived and weathered the storms of the internet's fad trends.
Tell you what, there's a story there. Someone about a year and a half ago was on top of the world.
Oh yeah, no, people were
gone.
tripping to try and give them money. Yeah.
Easy come, easy go, my friends.
Bye-bye.
Easy come, easy go.
Rebecca, did you ever play HQ Trivia?
Like I did, but only for like 2 days because I could never like tune in when you needed to do it. Like, what was it, like 7 p.m. or something like that? And I never got invested enough for it to allocate time in my evening.
I mean, I think what was really interesting about that, it was so host driven, right? Like that guy made the app with just the way he hosted. So hopefully that guy got some sort of good gig out of it. He's hosting, I don't know, a lottery game show somewhere or something. Like hopefully he got a sweet deal.
You know, this is a situation where this guy's going to be at the airport bar one day and he's going to sit down next to some girl who's 12 years older than he is and be like, "You ever hear of HQ Trivia?" Like, is it on Instagram? Like, no, it's its own app.
No, they're going to be like, "Did that play after The Price is Right?"
Yeah.
I mean, not surprisingly, after it tried to expand beyond the original game, it just didn't go anywhere. People weren't super interested. And then one of the co-founders died.
Oh, sad.
Like late 2018. Yeah, so they had some leadership.
And it went downhill after that.
Leadership problems.
Absences as well. That's, All right, final news story in the hot take section. Does anyone know, other than Joe, because I told him what it is already, what Byte is? B-Y-T-E.
Something computer.
Kyle knows. Okay, you don't count then. Max, Maria, Rebecca?
Byte.
Nobody? Okay.
It's a computer delivery service.
It is not a computer delivery spot. That's Byte Squad.
On demand.
That is Byte Squad.
I really just need a new computer.
With the traditional...
I went to a naughty site. Now my computer's infected. I need a new one.
So Byte, B-Y-T-E, is the successor to Vine, the wildly popular 6-second video app that was shut down. Many people claim that TikTok is the successor to Vine. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I mean, I guess it probably took the place of some heavy Vine users. But one of the co-founders of the original Vine app has been working on developing Byte, which is going to basically be the same concept, just in a new form. One specific way
branding.
Yeah, I mean, can I have a cough button for Joe? Like, can I just have his too, so I can mute him?
Seat eject button.
Yeah. So the important part about Byte, why it's going to be differentiated from TikTok, according to their founder. Why are you people making weird faces?
She's being rude.
She is rude.
She tried to eject me from my seat.
I'm sorry.
I thought it was rude.
Is the fact that they're going to create a means right out of the gate to pay creators. And that's something that TikTok has not solved yet, is how to compensate creators. That is something that they're building into Byte right at the launch, is making sure that creators are compensated for the content they're making.
Yeah, and look, I think the platform that figures out the content creator payment problem is the platform of the 2020s.
Sure.
YouTube's done it, really. I mean, because we went over this last week, right?
Yeah.
They paid out basically 75% of everything they made.
But, I mean, you're not going to make any money on creating 15-second videos for YouTube, right? Like, you've got to create longer form stuff to get paid from YouTube.
By the way, I know what the solution is to this. You want me to tell you?
Let's hear it.
$1 billion. I'll tell you.
You want to tell us?
You're right. It's my secret. No, it's you have to have some sort of de minimis currency you can use in a platform where if you like or share it, you can basically give that creator like a fraction of a penny because you like their content. And so you put a certain budget into the app to use it. And maybe the average person only spends $10 a year in it, but in fractions of a penny or in pennies, however the amounts are set up, that's how the content is rewarded. So, and maybe it's minute of view and it's like, oh, it's 1 penny per minute viewed or something. And that's how you're paying the creators, is by your appreciation and consumption of their content directly.
That sounds like a platform that is primed to be taken over by Pornhub.
Yeah.
Well, I think Facebook was trying to do it with the Facebook currency. That's one of the reasons they were getting into that crypto game.
Yeah, but then they
not
got
working out.
Yeah, that didn't go so well.
Well, they're still doing it. They just stopped pushing it as fast.
Right.
They're just saying they're not going to do it this year.
All right. Final takes on the news segments.
Hot takes.
All right.
I gave you all my hot takes, bro.
Thank
Done.
you. We're going to go to an
$1 billion
article
idea.
out
Take that to the
of-
bank. Max, take that to the bank. Cash that.
We're going to do an article out of Digiday, which is entitled Why the Podcast Gold Rush is Slowing Down for Some Publishers. Joe.
So the article notes that several publishers have canceled or stopped doing podcasts over the last roughly 6 months. Why is this?
Not
you say?
us.
Not us. We're still going.
Yeah.
Why is this, you say? Well, it turns out, and we've always said this when we analyze podcast, the podcast system for producing and distributing the content is way, way, way ahead of the system for monetizing the podcast content.
Or even measuring it.
Or even measuring. So what you have in podcasting world is over the last year and a half, everybody rushed in, but not everybody had the proper business model to monetize on those. And so the way most publishers who've been successful, Vox Media, for example, or Barstool Sports, is they were already selling to advertisers. Instead, they were rolling the podcast into their existing packages and selling them like that. It was an add-on to the other part.
Yeah.
What has been difficult for smaller podcasts or smaller networks or one-off podcast is advertisers don't want to go through a list of 10,000 podcasts and buy them because people who place ads are fundamentally lazy. And I know this because I place ads and I'm fundamentally lazy. What you want to do as an ad buyer is you want to make...
Great selling point here.
Yeah. I mean, I give them the truth. Bleep. You want to place the buy in like one place and have it programmatically be distributed so that it goes to your target audience. And podcasting doesn't have that yet. Spotify's kind of starting to get there. So you have this issue where there's really good podcasts that just can't monetize enough.
Yeah, I mean, what's
them.
interesting about Spotify, too, in particular, is how much money they're spending snatching up content and shows, right? So Barstool's a decent example. Probably a better example of a sports podcast getting snatched up is Spotify bought The Ringer, which was a network of sports podcasts. So, I mean, they picked that up for what, $190-something million? Like it was another huge acquisition. Obviously, they brought in Gimlet. I mean, there's a ton of acquisitions that Spotify is making there. So it's a lot easier for them to solve that problem for the content that's brought into their app and into their network, which was built to serve dynamic advertising from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right. So Spotify has a very natural, built-in benefit compared to anybody else in the podcast industry.
So, the other part of this that it notes is it says, I'll read the quote, the competition is compounded by the fact that advertisers and listeners now expect higher production values from podcasters. When a publisher might once have been able to get away with recording in a coat closet, advertisers and listeners now expect better production. So part of the success of the medium has been that everything's gotten better. And so you have to now spend more to create the show than you did before.
I think one thing we're seeing too is just the natural maturation of the industry, right? So I mean, the last line of the article is it's no longer just grab a mic and interview some people. Said Stephanie Barron-Sanderson, the director of strategy at the audio agency Wordsworth and Booth. The interview was a go-to idea because it's so simple, but the problem with that is that the format is incredibly saturated, and I think that's accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to this with a sales rep for one of the big podcast networks last month, and he was like, "Oh, everybody, has this one-off show, and it's driving prices way down." And I was like, "Well, dude, the future is not that. The future is like, look at how every medium develops. It's look, your first TV show was basically a radio show on TV." And then you get to, what we have now with, Game of Thrones, for example, very produced.
Yeah, it's going to be who can consistently produce great content across a broad variety of categories.
Yeah, and there's just not enough demand for just people talking on a microphone like this.
Well, I mean, but even with Of Record, you've seen us go away from the interview format mostly. Yeah. Right? Like, because what we found is people were coming back for the content that we're talking about right now and less for some of the interviews. And that's not saying that like interview format podcasts don't have a place, but this was a mixed format and it was kind of throwing some people off.
And we're in a niche and like it's accretive to our other business lines. So for us, that's why it makes sense. what does it take? And we've had this discussion before. Are podcasts the next app store or are they the next YouTube? What does it take to prevent them from becoming the next app store where basically only 1 in 100 apps or make any money at all?
Yeah.
Versus YouTube where, you have an almost infinite long tail that's making some money.
My thought is that it probably looks more like YouTube at this point. I think it's going to have a lot of the characteristics that we saw in the App Store. I think it is possible to avoid some of the detriments of the App Store that we started seeing circa 2013, 2014, where there were just so many millions of apps and available in the Apple iTunes Store and in Google Play that they just, unless you had a huge marketing budget to push it right out of the gate, that it was
going to die.
Yeah, it was just going to get lost in the mix.
Rebecca?
I take the other angle. I'll say it looks more like the App Store, that unless you're with like a sophisticated marketer that's able to help escalate your podcast towards top of search when people look it up, and unless you have a base following, like
you're already a well-known brand or publisher, influencer.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're working with one of the publishers, it just gets completely buried.
The interesting difference there for me is, and this could change tomorrow if Apple and some of the major like podcast delivery services change their stores, is you could pay to get your app at the top of the App Store, right? Like you could pay for sponsored results there, and you still, for the most part, cannot pay to get your podcast discovered in the actual store, right? You can pay for marketing dollars, you can do awareness, you can do videos, you can do social ads, but there's still no way where if somebody has just $1 million of cash that they can put into marketing, that they can put their podcast at the top of the store.
And so my summary is I think it's two things. I think it's discovery has to get better, and then the monetization on the back end. There has to be a standard, AdSense for audio. Otherwise, you just become the App Store, you just become blogs as a medium. So next item, this is the hot takes segment of the show.
They're all the hot takes segment
of the show. We have Sarah. Say hello, Sarah.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about an app that has become front and center in my life because, I don't know, in about like July, I noticed my wife was just rummaging through her closet, like taking photos of everything she owned outside and then putting it in the mailbox. And I found out that...
You noticed that, did you?
Oh, I noticed it. Yeah. Like, why is all this sitting out here? She's like, I'm selling it. Like, on eBay? She's like, no, Poshmark. Like, what is Poshmark? What is Pish
For the
Posh?
record, that
is
not
how
what Sarah Clemens sounds
Yeah,
like.
like that is...
Say something.
So, I'll leave it at this. Let's, Rebecca.
First, let's talk about what Poshmark is.
Yeah, I'm going to let Rebecca introduce because I've never been on. Have you been on Poshmark?
No.
I've never. So I'm going to let
Anna's shown it to me, but I've never browsed it.
Rebecca, you introduce Poshmark, and then I'll give everybody an idea of the scale.
Yeah, so essentially Poshmark is a marketplace where people can post it started with like clothing and accessories. They've recently expanded into home accents, but everyone can just post and it uploads immediately. You give it a description, you try to give it, you obviously the goal is to take nice photos where it looks like something you would want to
like
own.
Instagram, right?
Kind of. You curate photos and you upload it immediately and wait for someone to make an offer. And so they can either pay you at cost or they try to negotiate with you. You either accept the offer or you renegotiate and then wait until it gets sold. They send you a shipping label if it's within a certain range. Then you slap it in the mail and wait for them to say that they've received it, and then payment is released to you.
So it's like Instagram and eBay had a love child, and it was Poshmark.
With their cousin Pinterest.
With their cousin Pinterest.
With no
That's
auction
weird.
feature.
With no auction fee. But you negotiate still.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, this is what my
but
wife
directly
was like,
back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to quantify what Poshmark is doing here, it was founded in 2011, but last year its sellers hit $1 billion in earner payouts. So just to give you an idea of the scale that we're talking about.
And Poshmark takes 20% of the sales.
They do. They take 20% of transactions, $15 or more, and then they take a flat $2.95 fee for under.
So it's got a good... Now, here's what I'm curious about, Sarah. Why has this just become a big thing in the last 18 months? Like, why has it become a cultural icon in the last 18 months where from 2011 to 2018, it existed, but I didn't know women who were just like all over it like they are now.
Right. So I feel like one thing I do want to mention is the platform. First off, they made the platform very safe for its users, right? So it looks like Instagram. It looks familiar. You're posting photos, you're commenting, you're sharing. They're good photos. It's what initially got me interested in Poshmark, right? So what it is doing, it is allowing for, at least I believe for women particularly, to
Are there men's
purchase.
stuff on there?
You know, I looked. There is some, you know, the
Yeah.
very high
Yeah, the
end
picture in the
accessories.
story is a guy taking a picture of his like Gucci loafers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Jonathan's
Gucci,
purchased
the
some.
male Gucci loafers were what got me there initially too. Yes, but you can resell and purchase nice, gently used, high end and high quality brands for a fraction of the cost, right? So there is this expectation. There's this standard that women have to maintain or be at to have a certain perception, and it's high end fashion and fascism. Classism has fascism.
Fascism.
Is
That's
that
what
where it
people
comes
who are
from?
no, I don't think so. I have no idea what the
No.
etymology is of fascism.
That's where it comes from. Like
Yeah.
you have
Fashionism.
classism and fashion. Like what lower class, even middle class can really afford high end fashion every single year?
This is interesting. So your hypothesis on why it works is basically something like the economy's been good for a long time now. So there's a lot of luxury product in the market at the top. Then you have this expectation that kind of cascades down, especially to women in their 20s and 30s, like professional women in their 20s and 30s, maybe working in offices where the expectation is going to be like not Target, right?
Ooh, I had that as one of my points,
Yeah.
right? Like
It's not Target anymore. That's good enough. And so the idea is what makes this work is women are feeling that pressure to have like designer product. And this is a economical way to get that secondhand, which doesn't have like the mothball scent to it of like a traditional consignment shop.
well, yeah, this is not your Aunt Myrtle and Ethel's consignment shop.
I
or
literally had an
thrift
Aunt
shop.
Myrtle.
Me too.
I literally had a
two
great
Aunt
aunt
Myrtles.
named Myrtle. Yeah, she was crazy and awesome.
I mean,
I have a different take.
Go ahead.
So mine is, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that, but mine is the gig economy, right? Like because technology has adapted to
Interesting.
users in the last few years. That's why we have Uber. That's why we have Bite Squad. That's why we have all of these different available technologies. People are thinking about the things they own or the assets that they have to use in different ways that they were 5 years ago, right? So when your ears perk up because you hear that your closet could make you $2,000 because you have things to sell on there. And this is more of the sell side,
it's
right?
a thing.
Yeah, like what Sarah described
Yeah.
was the buy side. What I'm describing is like the incentive
sell
to
side.
sell side.
The other interesting thing on here is 10% of their users are sellers. 50 million users, 5 million
Yeah,
sellers.
only
That's
5
very
million.
high.
I mean, and I think that's a good thing, right? Because that means they've got a lot of blue water to go out in for new sellers to come in.
Yeah.
That are only going to attract more buyers.
So, go ahead, Rebecca.
I have
I know nothing about this. I've never been on it.
So in my experience, which I think is probably the case for a lot of people, selling is a deeper part of the funnel in Poshmark. So you start off as a buyer and then you start to see what other people have to offer and you're like,
oh, I
wait,
got that.
I have nice shoes that are super uncomfortable when I wear it, but someone with a foot that's half a size smaller, these are perfect. Let me just sell them. Because I've been holding on to them. I don't want to donate them because I paid way too much money for them. And this is a perfect opportunity to sell.
Right, but this is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm gonna divot or pivot.
I'm
You're gonna divot.
I'm
We're
gonna-
not golfing back there.
I'm gonna pivot
So,
to a different
I mean,
viewpoint.
this is the Uber Eats of high-end consignment shops, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing here. High-end consignment
well,
shops have been an
wait, can I
important thing
point
for
out-
years.
It provides anonymity too, though. Like people who
Sure,
are
yeah.
too, quite frankly, embarrassed to go into those thrift shops. I think that's a really important aspect,
Yeah,
right? Like,
but
you
that's
can
the same
buy
thing as
it.
someone who's too lazy to go down the street to like their neighborhood grill and
so
get the food in
I-
person.
so
My
think that's
favorite store
interesting.
is Goodwill. I stamp with
But-
pride that.
But how many other people like you, Rebecca, have your like willingness to say, yeah, I shop at a consignment store or
These
thrift
shoes,
store?
Goodwill.
So I think the interesting part about that is there's this whole other piece of the market. Rebecca, tell me your Victoria's Secret. God, that sounds weird.
Yeah, that does sound very weird. So I'm just going to go into it because if Joe tries to explain
Orlando,
this any,
yes, go
any
ahead.
further. So the other week I was in
Tell me about your
Orlando.
Victoria's Secret.
You're done. The other week I was in Orlando, and there's no trip to Orlando for me that's complete without stopping at the outlets.
But
so,
you go to Orlando like every weekend.
Yeah, it's my favorite place in the whole world.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I go to the outlet. I go to Victoria's Secret because I'm like, oh, they always have good sales. And I'm from Orlando, so I'm super spoiled. I know that there's always like crazy good deals there, whereas you walk into like a regular Victoria's Secret, you're like, this shit's overpriced. So
That's
go
what I
in
always say.
and I'm checking out, found some cute bathing suits, whatever. There is the creepiest dude next to me that has 50 bags full of stuff. And the girl whispers to me that works there, because we were just like chatting, and she was like, yeah, he comes in like once a week and cleans us out. And she was like, he even
$2
tries
panties.
to fight with us over like what the cost should be. And she was like, hello, I work here. Of course I know how much this costs. But I was like, this is
Does he bring
terrifying.
his coupons?
No, there's no coupons. It's an outlet. But what it made
Mash.
me realize,
Oh.
I was like, oh my gosh, I do not trust online sellers. Like, you can use any random photo and say, hi, I'm Kylie, buy my underwear. And it could be this
That's going to
creepy
attract a
dude.
whole different
It could be this
crowd of
super
people.
creepy dude on the other end of it that uses this fake photo that's like selling you normal, like
You're
paid,
just now
he paid
realizing that a
99
huge
cents
portion of the
for penis
internet
butt.
is creepy dudes?
Yes.
Oh, it's-
Anyways, so that was my discovery, and I was mortified, and now I have a massive
Sarah has a
distrust
take.
for-
Okay, so that is disturbing, and I'm not surprised. But if you go on Poshmark, right? So I did this. I went and I tried to look for panties. And the most creepy thing I found was this pair of like relatively granny panties, striped blue ones. And it wasn't the panties being sold. It was because it was,
It was
on
the
a
granny.
blow up doll, right?
Oh.
Like that's the weird thing.
Oh.
That was my thought. So then I
Ugh.
went to this seller, and she has this whole store. You have a store, and she was selling multiple items, shoes, bags. I don't think Poshmark is that platform that has the creepy dudes. Like, I think that's where Poshmark sets themselves apart. That's eBay.
Or
It
like
very well
what-
could be.
Well, no. So what I think might be happening is the creepy dudes in the flip hustle from the outlets understand that, oh, this has to look like IG cute, and so what they do, they set up the profile because it's anonymous. Profile
True.
name is Kylie,
Right.
and here's my 900 pairs of underwear a week I'm selling.
Yeah, and I
Whoa.
don't know for sure where he's selling it. Like, I doubt it's Facebook Marketplace or something like that, where it's like his photos attached to it, because nobody would buy anything from that man. He just like, look, I'm sorry, they just wouldn't. But
you seem like a
but it-
reputable panty
yeah,
salesman, sir.
I mean, it just made. I mean, unless he has this huge fetish and he's not reselling it, like
I'm so
Wait,
uncomfortable.
wait.
I'm
But
so
anyways-
what does his
uncomfortable.
house
Anyways,
look
that's-
like if he's buying hundreds of pairs of panties a week and just keeping them for his personal pleasure?
yeah, that's a whole different conversation on next week's segment. But
Lord
yeah.
Almighty.
Anyway, it was just a really eye-opening experience where I was like, oh gosh, I really don't know who I'm purchasing.
So another thing I think is kind of interesting, and Matt alluded to this earlier on the gig economy, like the hustle piece, is my wife makes more than I do by a significant amount. Like, her time isn't inexpensive, but she spends a significant amount of time like selling stuff out of her closet for marginal amounts of money, and she's doing it, I think partially as a hobby. Like, I
Yeah.
think she enjoys the game.
it's fun, yeah.
The game, and then partially because it kind of like mentally helps justify like new purchases.
Well, I mean, it's the same reason why Gary Vaynerchuk's going to yard sales like in suburban New Jersey on
Yeah.
the weekends and finding, Pogs and Pokemon crap from 20 years ago
Yeah.
that he's going and flipping for 300% on eBay. Like, he just
it's
likes
just cool
the game.
to say you
Yeah.
did it. It's like status.
It's
to
the
say
same
you
reason
did
he's
it.
still trading baseball cards in 2020.
It's like
it's
adult Neopets.
just
You
interesting.
set up your store, random people come and buy it.
Sarah, question: what would make you not use Poshmark anymore? What are the set of things that could happen on there where
she
you
met the guy that Rebecca saw in Orlando.
You know, it's it's bad that that wasn't even one of my top things. I was thinking you guys could give me a raise, and then I could afford the initial price or value it'd take to pay for these items.
That's true.
No, go to Goodwill like Rebecca does.
Yeah.
I mean, I have walked away with some steals.
Goodwill panties.
Ugh.
Right. Well, also, okay, so now we have this other issue is Tallahassee does have a lot of nice things, and it's a nice area, but it's not like if you went in a thrift store or consignment shop in New York City. You're not going to see
interesting.
those same high-end, high brands.
So you also have an
For resale.
availability
It's
thing.
a lot of
where-
Correct.
Talbots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can confirm.
and
Yeah.
Loft.
Interesting. So
Yes.
if you want luxury items aftermarket, but you live in like, Tallahassee or really most, not Miami, New York, LA, Chicago, Nashville, one of the big metropolitan areas, the only way you can access that is through Poshmark.
Exactly.
Why didn't this happen on eBay? Is the problem is eBay is designed for men in a weird way, like
No,
the
I can-
UI?
I
And
think
Well,
the,
I can tell
the
you-
fear of fakes is too great on eBay.
I mean, even then, it's so easy to post a Poshmark. Like, there was one day I told myself I was going to force myself to figure it out. And then I was amazed that 2.5 minutes later, my listing was posted with my first time running through it, because it's literally the same idea of posting on Instagram. You take the picture, you add a description, your cost, and then you upload it and you're done.
Interesting.
It's so much easier.
And then they capture your account information on the back end.
Well, you have to create an account, but I
Okay.
had one from being a seller.
Okay.
So it's kind of like if you added
From being a
PayPal
buyer.
in there as well.
Yes, sorry, from being a
Mhm.
buyer.
Oh, so you're able to transact directly on the platform too.
Mhm.
So there's not the friction of how do you want to pay, like PayPal
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever.
no.
Interesting. So going back to the question of what are the changes of the platform that would make you use it less?
They would have to stop, targeting to the pretty much the women and the high-end fashion and have such availability and
Mhm.
products available.
So if like the product selection was less high
There you
quality,
go,
it would
yep.
it would be a eh.
If I could get that just as easily for $10 originally, then I'm gonna pay
So if you had people flipping like their Target purchases on there and it's
Right.
just filled with that, you're like
you might as
no.
well just go buy it new for a couple more bucks yourself.
Yeah.
I think if they increase their fees more, because I know they've done that recently.
20% 's a
and it's a
heck of a
hefty
fee.
fee,
Substantial, yeah.
and they've increased it over the years. And so I know a lot of people that just take it directly to Facebook Marketplace because they're like, oh, I'm used to paying a smaller fee. Now 20% of my high-end product is a lot of money that I could just.
So I think the 20% fee also does something else, and I think it encourages the platform to be maintained as a platform,
For high end stuff.
well, not just for high-end stuff, but where you're selling stuff that you already purchased or used, right? The 20% fee discourages to some degree flipping. It is more geared towards, like, I mean, you can
Oh,
do
yeah.
it, but you got to do flipping and volume with a 20% fee, right? eBay is not taking
Yeah.
20% of your purchase.
I mean, you got to have 100 panties that you're making $1 on after everything. In
Yep,
order-
or you got to have a $500 dress that you paid $500 for. You can sell it for $300, still give $60 away to Poshmark, and it not hurt you because that dress was sitting in your closet and you weren't going to wear it again, right? So that high fee kind of makes the platform naturally not just a giant dumpster marketplace like eBay where people can put the most miscellaneous crap that they can ever find, or go to the flea market and just put random shit on there.
I mean, let's play the game we finished with yesterday. What is the market profile for your core? Should we do a seller or buyer profile?
I think buyer, just because there's 10 to 1.
Core buyer profile.
They're both Rebecca Romero.
They're both Rebecca Romero. So like name, income level. Let's just play that out.
Brittany.
Brittany.
I like Brittany. That'll work.
Okay.
Brittany's how old?
Late 20s.
Late 20s.
In that point where she's growing in her career and needs to look, more reputable at her job, but doesn't have the salary yet to afford it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And wants another revenue stream.
Yep. So she's able to kind of get in, side hustle it, not side hustle it, like driving Uber.
Be a boss babe.
What's a boss babe?
Oh God, that's
you go.
we'll
That's
wheel
another
diving,
episode.
yeah.
So boss babe Brittany is, flipping stuff in her closet, getting higher end apparel because what does she do for a living?
She's a digital marketing professional.
She's a digital marketing professional.
She buys Facebook
Consultant.
ads.
I think Brittany works in the public relations field.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
a mid-market city, right? She's not in New York, but she's in
Yeah.
a city bigger than Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Charlotte.
Communications.
Yeah, Charlotte's a good one.
Yeah.
Charlotte works.
She's selling
She-
all the gifts she got from ex-boyfriends.
All the gifts and all the old Lily that she's one size too big for now.
Oh, interesting. So all the lily she got,
Ooh,
like,
God, that was
out of
a-
And
college.
on that,
That was a
exact
low-key
note-
slam on Brittany right there.
No, like she was a 00 and now she's a size 2.
Uh,
And on
Uh-huh.
that exact note, you can go to Sarah Hollins and get a bunch of 00 and 0 Lily dresses. Not joking, y'all. Like 6 or 7.
Affirmation of
Yeah.
my point.
Man, Rebecca
Nailed
hit
it.
that one.
This episode is brought to you by
Lily
Sarah's
Pulitzer.
Poshmark.
Sarah's Poshmark. Man, how far are we from podcasts being sponsored by people's Poshmark accounts?
I was gonna say I have a Lily athletic tennis dress. I'll add to your collection when
Please
you
do.
say.
Look, it's legitimately possible with the people listening to this, which are a lot in the audience you described, like that Sarah sells something as a result of the
Yeah.
podcast.
Assuming
Like, hey,
we
heard you
didn't
on the
offend them
podcast.
all.
How do they
Yeah.
find you on Poshmark? Is it a username? Is it just
Yeah.
your name?
Yep.
Username.
I mean,
I
plug.
think you can do
At
both.
least both of you plug your Poshmark stores on the air.
I think it's at Becca.
Rebecca
MC.
doesn't even know hers off the top of her head.
Oh
You're
my
not a real
God.
Poshmark.
You're not a real Poshmark seller.
Sorry.
All right, we're running long on time. Final takes on Poshmark.
So my point of Rise on 2018 is part of it. I think it's a small part, but sustainability movement, because thrifting is a huge part of that, where
I think that's
it's
fair.
like
Yeah, I think that's fair.
recycling clothing. And so
It does
now
feel guilty. Like
yes,
throwing it away.
now you're like, oh, like paying for high-end products that are made in a factory is unethical. But if you recycle it and buy it from
Mhm.
someone who already paid that upfront fee, it's now ethical. So that's my hot take on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Sarah? Joe?
I just stick with it's a great resource.
Yeah. So here's what impressed me about it is whatever's going on there got not the 28-year-old to buy stuff. They got my 34-year-old wife to take the time to sell stuff.
This week
Yeah.
he's saying his wife's age on the air. Like he's just
He just
he's
keeps
just
digging
asking
his
for
grave,
it.
I know.
Next week, Sarah will be replacing Joe.
Joe.
as he will not be alive.
And that's the difficult part. The
Yeah.
buyer side for used luxury goods isn't the difficult part. Hey,
Mhm.
who wants luxury goods at a discount price?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me. Who wants to sell them? That's
And that's
the
why
hard
I said I
part.
think there's still a lot of opportunity. They've got a 10-to-1 ratio like buyer to seller. There's a lot of open space there to go get more sellers on
Yeah.
the platform as they continue to convert people.
Yeah.
So we are out of time.
Wait, what was your final take? Did you have a final?
I
hot
just
take on
said it that
Oh.
I think there's a lot of open space for them to get because of the 10-to-1 ratio.
Unless
Like,
that
that's my
panties guy
final
keeps
take.
going to
Next
Victoria's
tier
Secret
is a
clearing them
funnel.
out.
Yeah, Joe's favorite part is the number of panties he can purchase for low prices on Poshmark.
I mean, it's a great. You gotta flip. You gotta
It's a
make that
good
side
deal.
hustle,
It's
dude.
Get that
$1
hustle.
a piece isn't bad.
All right. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week. Actually, between this week and next week, we're going to have a special interview episode where we're going to do some deep diving on the marketing of the presidential campaigns that are currently still operating. It's getting fewer.
The ones that are
well, it's
cur-
getting
but,
fewer and
hey,
fewer each
by the time we
day.
record, there'll be less.
Yep, there will be less. Somebody will drop out between
I don't
now
know
and
why
next
we're
week.
pretending like it's not going to be Bloomberg and Trump at this point.
I mean,
R.I.P. Biden.
yeah, I mean, Joe's got to go.
Rip Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners.
So jump in again to podcasterrecord.com/survey. Take the listener survey. Tell us what you want more of, what you want less of. We like to hear from you so we can give you what is most valuable. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week.